Bridge between worlds. The border monitoring station appeared deceptively fragile, a series of interconnected domes nestled in the shadow of a massive ridge. Its modest exterior belied the sophisticated technology within, designed to track every movement across the contested territories of Zalera. 3 guards, minimal weapons, Cathara reported, lowering her scope. They had spent the day observing from a concealed position among the rock formations. Standard rotation pattern, with a security vulnerability during shift change. Nix nodded, mentally calculating their odds. If we can access the communication array without raising alarms, we might be able to broadcast what we've discovered to both sides simultaneously, make it public enough that it can't be buried. Cathara's markings pulsed with agreement, but her expression remained troubled. And afterward? The question hung between them, heavy with implications. In the 2 days since their night in the Crystal Forest, neither had spoken directly about what would follow once they completed their mission. The unspoken reality of their respective duties and loyalties had created a growing tension beneath their newfound intimacy. "One problem at a time," Nick said, not meeting Cathara's eyes. "Let's focus on staying alive long enough to worry about afterward." As twilight deepened into night, they moved silently toward the station. Cathara had donned the armor of one of the fallen Bloodfang warriors, the insignia modified to match the Border Patrol's markings. Nix wore a Xyrillian environmental suit with the helmet sealed, a disguise that would hold up to casual inspection in the dim light. Cathara approached the main entrance with confident strides, Nix following 2 paces behind as protocol dictated for a superior officer and subordinate. The guard at the door straightened as they approached. "Sentinel," he acknowledged, noticing Cathara's rank markings. "We received no notification of inspection." "That was intentional," Cathara replied coldly. "Recent security breaches have required unannounced evaluations. Stand aside." The guard hesitated only briefly before compliance. Inside, the station hummed with the quiet efficiency of automated systems. 2 additional guards looked up in surprise as they entered the central monitoring room. "Continue your duties," Cathara ordered. "I require access to the communication array for a priority transmission to command." One guard moved toward a console, but the other's eyes narrowed suspiciously. "Your markings," he said slowly. "They're veiled claw patterns, not Bloodfang. Why would a veiled claw sentinel be wearing—" He never finished the question. Nix's stun blast caught him squarely in the chest, dropping him before he could reach for his weapon. Cathara moved simultaneously, disarming the second guard with a precise strike to his wrist before rendering him unconscious. "So much for the subtle approach," Nix muttered, removing her helmet. Cathara secured the doors while Nix accessed the communication array. Her coalition training included basic knowledge of Xyrillian technology, enough to navigate the system with Cathara's guidance. "We have perhaps 10 minutes before someone notices the station has gone silent," Cathara said, joining Nix at the console. "What exactly do you plan to transmit?" Nix's fingers flew across the interface. "Everything. The falsified intelligence reports you discovered, the coordinates of my routine patrol that happened to cross directly into Xyrillian airspace during supposed peace talks, the attack patterns that make no strategic sense unless someone is deliberately prolonging this conflict." She paused, looking up at Cathara. "And us, 2 enemies who found more common ground in 5 days than our species have in 15 years of diplomatic attempts." Cathara's markings pulsed with surprise. "You would use what's between us as political leverage." "I would use it as proof," Nix corrected softly. "Proof that there's another way forward, if we're brave enough to take it." After a moment, Cathara nodded. Together, they compiled the transmission, data files, personal testimony, and a direct appeal to both coalition and Xyrillian leadership. Nix added a final component, a set of coordinates for neutral ground where representatives from both sides could meet, with Nix and Cathara serving as intermediaries. Broadcast initiated, Nix announced, as the system began transmitting on all frequencies. Now we wait. Cathara moved to the window, looking out at the border that had divided their peoples for so long. They will try to silence us. Both sides have too much invested in this conflict to allow two rogue soldiers to disrupt it. Let them try, Nix joined her, their shoulders touching. We've already proven the impossible is possible. The response came faster than either had anticipated. Within 20 minutes, the communication array lit up with incoming transmissions from both Coalition and Xyrillian command centers. Most expressed outrage, demanded explanations, or ordered them to stand down. But a few, a precious few, requested more information. General Larissa, Nix briefed, recognizing one of the coalition identifiers. She's always advocated for peace negotiations. If she's listening, others will follow. Cathara's markings brightened, and this frequency belongs to Elder Vorath of the Conclave. He holds significant influence among the moderate clans. Hour by hour, the balance shifted. More voices joined the dialogue, demanding investigations into the allegations. Reports began filtering in of unrest among both human colonies and Xyrillian territories as the transmission spread beyond military channels to civilian networks. By dawn, the monitoring station had become the focal point of an unprecedented development. Official representatives from both species were en route, along with independent observers to ensure transparency. It appears we've started something, Cathara said, her voice tinged with wonder, as they watched the approaching vessels from both Coalition and Xyrillian space. Nix took Cathara's hand, their fingers interlocking in what had become a familiar gesture. No, we continued something, something that began when you decided not to leave an enemy to die. Cathara's free hand rose to touch Nix's face in the Xyrillian gesture of battle-forged trust. What happens now, Nix Harlow, when our people arrive and the political machinery takes over this fragile beginning? Nix smiled, turning to press her lips gently against Cathara's palm. Now comes the hard part. We build bridges strong enough to bear the weight of two civilizations, and we do it together. As delegates from both species approached across the neutral ground of Zalera's border, the impossible suddenly seemed within reach. Not merely a ceasefire or a fragile treaty, but genuine peace, built on connection rather than compromise. Cathara's markings pulsed in rhythm with her quickened heartbeat as she whispered, "Whatever comes, remember this. You taught a warrior to feel something beyond the glory of battle." Nix squeezed her hand in response. "And you taught me that sometimes the bravest act isn't fighting to the death for what you believe in. It's living for the chance to change those beliefs entirely." Together, they stepped forward to meet their future, whatever shape it might take.
Celestial Dance. The eastern sector shows a 12% increase in soil vitality, Taylor announced, reviewing the latest environmental readings with genuine amazement. And the crystal ferns, they're reproducing for the first time in decades. Narina studied the data, scrolling across the laboratory screens, trying to maintain scientific objectivity despite the flutter in her chest whenever Julian entered the room. 2 months into the research mission, small but significant changes were appearing across Astara's ecosystem. It could be coincidental, she suggested, though her voice lacked conviction. Perhaps a natural cycle we haven't previously documented. From across the lab, Julian looked up from his samples, his smile warming her in ways she couldn't scientifically explain. Or perhaps your world is responding to something new. The council members exchanged glances. Their initial skepticism about the Terran scientist had evolved into grudging respect as his botanical innovations began showing results. But Carvos, the eldest council member, remained suspicious. These changes are most concentrated around areas where you two have conducted research, Carvos observed, his ancient eyes narrowing. What exactly are your methods, Dr. Reed? Julian hesitated. How could he explain what he barely understood himself, that when he and Narina worked together, when their hands touched or their eyes met, something inexplicable happened, that plants seemed to respond not to his science, but to their connection? Cross-pollination techniques, he offered instead, combining Terran approaches with Astaran botanical wisdom. Later that evening, away from the council's scrutiny, Julian and Narina walked along the cliffs overlooking the prismatic sea. Below them, waves crashed against crystal formations, sending sprays of bioluminescent water into the twilight air. They suspect something, Narina said, her fingers intertwined with his. Carvos has always been protective of our traditions. If he knew about us— Julian pulled her closer. Is there actually a law against it, against us? Not specifically, but only because no one imagined it possible. Astarans and humans were never meant to connect as we have. In the fading light, Julian traced the luminescent markings along her cheekbone. Yet here we are. Their kiss deepened as the twin suns set, casting the landscape in deep purples and blues. Neither noticed how the dormant moonflowers around them began to unfurl, their silver petals reaching toward the emerging stars. That night, in Narina's private chambers, they discovered each other with wonder and reverence. Julian marveled at the way her purple skin seemed to glow from within as his hands explored her curves. Narina was fascinated by the warmth of his body, so different from the cool temperature of her people. "Your heartbeat," she whispered, her palm resting on his chest. "It's like music." As their bodies intertwined, the very air around them seemed to shimmer with energy. Outside, across the royal gardens, dormant plants stirred in their beds, roots stretching deeper into suddenly fertile soil. Within the sacred grove, an ancient tree that had stood leafless for a century quietly unfurled a single green bud. Afterwards, as they lay together in the silvery moonlight, Julian noticed something extraordinary. A small patch of moss growing from the stone floor beneath their bed, spreading outward in a perfect circle. "Narina," he whispered, pointing to the impossible growth. "Look!" She stared in wonder, then placed her hand upon the moss. It responded to her touch, growing more vibrant. "It's as though—" she began. "As though the planet approves," Julian finished, the implication dawning on them both. But their discovery would have to wait. A sharp knock interrupted the moment, followed by Taylor's urgent voice. "Princess, you must come quickly! The sacred tree! It's blooming!" They exchanged a look of mingled hope and apprehension. Something was awakening on Astara, something tied to their forbidden union. And not everyone would welcome this change.
Unity's dawn. The grand chamber of the celestial conclave had witnessed countless debates over its centuries of existence, but none quite like this. Talon and Nyara stood side by side at the central podium, their evidence against the Drozoth Confederation displayed on holographic screens throughout the vast space. These violations cannot be dismissed as isolated incidents, Talon concluded, addressing the hushed assembly. The Drozoth strategy is clear. Manufacture conflict, isolate potential opposition, then absorb or destroy. Krult, the Drozoth representative, rose from his seat, scales flaring with anger. These accusations are themselves manufactured, a desperate ploy by a primitive world seeking relevance and a fading empire clinging to past glory. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Despite the evidence, many delegations remained hesitant to challenge the Drozoth openly. Their economic influence extended too deeply into too many worlds. Nyara stepped forward, her royal presence commanding attention. When I first approached Ambassador Reeves, many questioned my judgment. Why align with Earth, a newcomer, barely established among the stars? Today, I answer that question. Her bioluminescent patterns intensified, reflecting her passion. Earth represents what the Conclave once stood for: cooperation over domination, diplomacy over destruction. While we've grown comfortable in our established hierarchies, humanity reminds us of our founding principles. Talon watched her with admiration, seeing not just the princess, but the woman he'd come to love across the barriers of species and culture. The Drozoth prey on our divisions, Nyara continued. They attack Earth because they believe no one will defend it. They threaten Lumeria because they think others will abandon us rather than risk conflict. They are counting on our selfishness and fear. She extended her hand openly toward Talon, their fingers intertwining publicly for the first time. Gasps echoed through the chamber at this unprecedented display between representatives of different worlds. Lumeria stands with Earth, not from political calculation, but from shared values. I invite any delegation that remembers the true purpose of this conclave to join us. For a moment, silence reigned. Then, slowly, the Arcturian representative rose. The Science Consortium confirms the validity of their evidence. Arcturian worlds stand with Earth and Lumeria. One by one, other delegations declared their positions. Not all sided with them. Some powerful worlds maintained neutrality, while others openly aligned with the Drozoth. But the balance tipped, momentum building with each declaration. As the emergency session concluded, a new coalition had formed, one strong enough to challenge Drozoth aggression and protect vulnerable worlds. This is just the beginning, Talon cautioned as they left the chamber together. The Drozoth won't retreat easily. No, Nyara agreed, but they've lost the element of surprise and gained an opponent they severely underestimated. Later, in the privacy of Nyara's diplomatic quarters, they faced the personal implications of their public stance. My council will question my objectivity, she admitted, her fingers tracing patterns across Talon's chest as they lay together. Royal heirs aren't expected to form attachments to representatives of unestablished worlds. And Earth's government will wonder if I have been compromised by alien influence, Talon replied with a wry smile. Diplomatic regulations strictly prohibit whatever this is. Nyara's bioluminescence pulsed with amusement. I believe humans call it falling in love. Is that what happened? He asked, drawing her closer. Against all probability, she confirmed. The following months transformed the galactic landscape. The coalition Talon and Nyara had sparked grew stronger as the Drozoth aggression became more overt. Earth received technological assistance that accelerated its defensive capabilities by decades, while Lumerian diplomatic channels opened new avenues for human integration into interstellar society. One standard year after their first meeting, they stood together on the observation deck of the newly constructed Earth Embassy. Below them stretched the iridescent crystal forests of Lumeria Prime, where a delegation from Earth was being welcomed with unprecedented honors. "They're calling it the Lumira Earth Accord," Talon said, reviewing the official documentation. "First of its kind between an established empire and an emerging world." "They don't know it's actually our marriage treaty," Nyara replied with a mischievous glow rippling across her skin. "At least not the parts we personally negotiated." Talon laughed, pulling her into an embrace. "From ignored ambassador to interspecies diplomat to royal consort. Not the career path I anticipated. And I never expected to find wisdom and love from a world at the edge of the galaxy." She rested her head against his shoulder. "Perhaps that's the lesson for all of us. The stars we overlook often shine the brightest." Beyond the viewport, ships from a dozen worlds moved in peaceful formation, a fleet not of war, but of solidarity. The galaxy remained imperfect, the Drazith threat contained but not eliminated, yet something profound had changed. A human once ignored now helped shape interstellar policy. A Lumerian princess had challenged centuries of tradition. Together, they had reminded the conclave of its founding purpose, that differences need not divide, that new voices carried wisdom, and that sometimes the most powerful force in the universe began with someone simply choosing to sit beside a stranger.